Before I begin, most of these details are from preliminary information. To my knowledge, no official reports or documents were ever released that I have been able to obtain. I've tried my best to not share any details that have been debunked, nor will I go into graphic detail of their tragic demise. The goal of telling you this very real tragic event is this tragedy put a spotlight on many problems in the criminal justice system in the state of Oklahoma. These problems are in every step along the way, from incarceration discipline criteria, prosecuting crimes committed behind bars, early release, no home compliance checks for violent and sexual offenders, and when a complaint is filed with police, if the offender does not permit entry, there's absolutely nothing police can do because there are zero state requirements when it comes to home compliance checks. Only a few offenders have to do self-check-ins with their local sheriffs and provide updated information at their own will every 3 months with no real monitoring at all. Registry compliance, the sex offender registry itself, the lack of details on the registry, out-of-state sex offenders in most cases do not have to register in Oklahoma, and there are new rules about getting convictions expunged and being removed from the registry if no new crimes are committed after 5 years in most cases. In no way am I implying that anyone could have prevented this murder besides Jesse McFadden. But with hindsight being 2020, this is a great opportunity for us to evaluate what went wrong and do something as citizens to prevent another tragedy like it or similar to it. Tragedies can always happen, but if we as citizens ensure the laws that govern us can mitigate obvious tragedies from happening, that means the goal intended has been met. There are 6 murder victims in this tragedy: Holly Guest, 35, and her children Riley Elizabeth Allen, 17, Michael James Mayo, 15, and Tiffany Dora Guest, 13. Among the other victims are Ivy Webster, 14, Brittany Brewer, 15. I will not tolerate any victim blaming on this channel. That is not the point of what we will be accomplishing. If you are wasting your time assigning blame, you have already missed the point of this and become part of the problem. My goal in researching these tragedies is to come up with real solutions for the safety of each and every citizen that these laws govern. And when we achieve our goal in one state, take our legislation nationwide. This tragedy is so complex, everything that could go wrong did. Every system all along the way failed. And now these families and the community of Henryetta, Oklahoma are left to pick up the pieces. August 1983, Jesse McFadden was born in the state of Kansas. Not much is known about his upbringing, but it has been reported he dropped out of high school in the 9th grade and moved to Oklahoma. In the early 2000s, living in McAlester, Oklahoma, he began to get into legal trouble, beginning with being in possession of beer underage. 5 days before Christmas in 2002, he stole a substantial amount of money from his own grandfather. He was put on probation in 2003 after pleading guilty to a felony, grand larceny in a dwelling house. He also had to spend 90 days in the Pittsburgh County Jail and was ordered to pay $64,000 in restitution. He was caught twice in 2003 driving under suspension. He then committed rape on November 2nd, 2003, at a trailer home in Canadian Shores, about 21 miles north of McAlester. He pled no contest to the felony charge just 2 weeks later and was sentenced to 20 years. His probation on the grand larceny case was revoked. After arriving in prison, he told officials, "I stole $80,000 from my grandpa's safe, blew it on drugs and unnecessary things." According to the records, he said he got spun out on dope, vodka, and an antipsychotic drug, and he, quote, "lost control of myself and raped one of my friends." Prosecutors told prison officials that he tied the rape victim by her hands and feet to a bedpost, cut her shirt off, put a knife to her throat, and threatened to use it if she did not shut up. The rape victim, Crystal Strong, now 36, has spoken about her ordeal by name to the media since the murders. She says, "I was like screaming pretty loud, like, 'Get off me, get off me,' and like crying. And he said, 'If you don't stop screaming, I'll kill you right here.'" She told reporters he was dating a friend and they had only met a couple of times. She described him as weird. He showed up at her dad's trailer home at 2 or 3 in the morning, banging repeatedly on the door, she recalled. He claimed his girlfriend had broken up with him and he needed a place to stay. Crystal said, "That's not my problem. You need to go home. Figure it out. My dad's not here." And then I think I went to shut the door and he pushed his way through. And the next thing I know, I have a sock in my mouth. I was being drugged through the house and I was being tied up to my bed and the whole knife thing. She fled after the rape. She recalled being told McFadden was caught by a river and had slit his wrists. She moved to Kansas afterward. She still lives there and has made many public appearances after this tragedy. She fought hard while Jesse was in prison, trying to make sure he was not released early, and now feels responsible she did not do enough to keep him behind bars. A year after raping a 17-year-old girl at knife point, Jesse McFadden wrote from prison that he had changed. He told a judge in 2004 letter that the future is all that's left to me because there's no changing the past. "I know what I done was a horrible thing to do to another person," he wrote in his request for time off his sentence. "I feel very bad for what I've done. It's something that I think about every day. I'd like to get out and prove that I have changed and am a better person." Jesse McFadden started getting in trouble in prison even before he even asked a judge for less time in 2004. His first misconduct was for having tobacco in his cell. His judge refused in November 2004 to modify his prison time. In 2005, he told a corrections case manager not to house him any further with black people, the records show. "I was raised around the Klan. A lot of my family is Klan. I am a racial person," he wrote. The first sexual incident was reported in 2009. He was caught naked in his cell with another inmate. The next sexual incident was in 2010 when another inmate accused him of rape. McFadden admitted to sexual relationships with the inmate and was disciplined internally. In 2013, he was caught with a cell phone for the first time after a woman reported he had been texting her for 3 months. The woman reported she stopped responding after finding out he was in prison. She said he then began sending threatening texts. He was caught again with the cell phone in 2016 and admitted to the misconduct. The second time, he was also charged in 2017 in Muskogee County District Court with sex crimes. He was accused in one felony count of sexting with a minor and in a second felony count of possessing juvenile pornography. On the phone were found a sexual video of a 16-year-old girl and photos of her in different stages of undress. Also found were photos of a male exposing himself. Despite those misconducts and others, he completed his sentence under the Department of Corrections calculations that gave him credit for such things as good behavior and time spent in jail. Despite all of these violations, he was classified a level 4 inmate, which means outstanding behavior. That time in jail was 76 days, moving his release date to October 30th, 2020. He was jailed in his 2017 sex case with the minor after getting out of prison. He was released from jail on a $25,000 bond, and the case was delayed repeatedly. His jury trial in that case was set to begin May 1st, 2023. Prosecutors revealed in court filings that at one point McFadden tried to get the victim to claim he was actually in a secret romantic relationship with one of her older friends. He also tried to get her to claim she'd been talking and texting with another inmate, not McFadden, prosecutors told a judge. Prosecutors called McFadden manipulative and controlling. They revealed in court filings he wrote her sexual letters that they would get married and have children. McFadden wrote the victim one more time, April 30th, 2023, on Facebook. I did exactly what I promised I would do when I got out. I got a marketing job making great money and was being advanced. Been there 2 years now and made a great life like I promised I would do with you. Now it's all gone. I told you I wouldn't go back. This is all on you for continuing this. McFadden had been free since October 30th, 2020, after serving only 16 years, 9 months, and 15 days in prison. His mother picked him up from Joseph Harp Correctional Center in Lexington, and he at first lived in McAlester, Oklahoma. Jesse and Holly Guest married in Okmulgee County. Their first anniversary would have been May 26, 2023. Her mother, Janet Mayo, said she met him through an inmate that she was an inmate pen pal program with. McFadden got Holly's information when he stole pages out of the other inmate's address book, the mother said. And he started writing Holly, acting all sweet and innocent. He was, as I put it before, a monster in sheep's clothing. He knew how to charm and come off like a perfect gentleman and an angel. Everybody mistreated him. He was misunderstood, and that what he had done before was a mistake, Mayo said. She gave second chances where people didn't deserve them. The mother also said McFadden paid a woman to impersonate the rape victim and tell Holly what happened in 2003 was just a misunderstanding. April 29th, 2023, Ivy and Brittany went to a sleepover at the McFadden residence. The time and date of the actual murder is unclear. Each victim was killed due to gunshot wounds, and some of the victims were sexually assaulted. The 2 girls were reported missing May 1st. Jesse McFadden also did not show up to court May 1st. Police then went to the residence in Henryetta, Oklahoma, and discovered some of the victims, along with Jesse, dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. On another search of the property later that day, the remaining victims were found. And that is not where this tragedy ends. The jurisdictional issues and cooperating agencies' lack of clear communication was made clear to the families of these victims in the following days. The crime scene was released to the family, and it was the family that discovered crucial evidence into what actually happened the weekend of the murders. The warrants the police collected revealed just how little law enforcement actually took from the crime scene, and the obvious flaws and contradictions in the investigation and reporting. Depending on which agency you ask, local law enforcement says they were only responsible for searching the outside of the residence, and the task force they asked for help blames local law enforcement for not searching inside the residence. Family members had been allowed at the residence within days of the murders and were told they had just a few days to remove the belongings from the house because the landlord was taking everything inside the home to the dump. It was later uncovered that the landlord was not supposed to be renting the property. Families of the victims had been through the house and property several times and had recorded much of the evidence left behind at the crime scene. Approximately the 5th time they had been there, they finally found their daughter's cell phone. Her family had reported they received a text from their daughter's cell phone that they believed did not come from their daughter. They believe it came from Jesse after he had murdered her. As soon as they found the cell phone, they called law enforcement, and that is when it was discovered that the residence had never even been searched. As I mentioned before, this tragedy was preventable, and it spotlighted so many issues in our criminal justice system. Assigning blame does not make this pain in our hearts go away, but pulling together enacting change that can protect our vulnerable members of society is how we are victorious in our future and how we protect our future generations.